Hi everyone, I'm going to do a solo podcast recording today based upon the ones that one of my coaches has been doing himself. A bit of inspiration there that I don't always have to talk to somebody else to talk about things that might be of interest to you and listening to what I'm up to in terms of my web design business and how it runs behind the scenes. I suppose to go back right to the start for me at this point in time, 2014 was when my business launched. I did a website for free for a local landscape gardener who did some work on our garden for us, and he literally pushed me into trying this as a business. I think Dougie, the guy's name, I think he thought I was a young guy, had an awful lot of life in front of me, which I guess I still have, and I needed a new job and the rest of it that went with it, and hesitated for quite a while. I genuinely thought back in the day that it was flooded, the market was full of other web designers. I couldn't ever make my own place in that group, and I would never make it successfully. But for whatever reason, I gave it a try. I got my name out there in a few website forums that I used for my car modification stuff at the time, and got a few projects through that, quite low ticket at that point in time, and it kind of took on from there. I started website design work in my previous job. I was IT technician, IT manager, and then school business manager for a group of schools across in Northumberland, and landed that job not long before the government decided every school had to legally have a website. So I was then given the task of managing 17 schools' websites, which at the time, can't deny it, I hated it. Literally had no desire to do it at all. I had the skill set in terms of being able to set the websites up. I had been working on an intranet site back in the day before the internet itself was actually fast enough to use more than one or two PCs. However, it was a new skill set to me in terms of not the design parts necessarily, but actually what content was needed, how to present that content, how to structure it, how to organize it, and also how to get content off customers. Because as you well imagine, for school, the last thing on their mind is creating content for what needs to be quite a relatively big website. So without me fully understanding it and without them really having the time to give me that, put that content together, you can imagine over a few years that became quite a challenging task to kind of work through it and get stuff off them. However, by the time it finished, and I'd done that for a few years, I had gained the skill sets there a little bit. So those first websites, I knew a little bit more about what I needed, what did the client need to give me, photos, text, that type of stuff. And back then, I was letting the clients lead me. I was literally telling them, asking them, what do you want on this website? What pages do you want? What words do you want? I could guide them on that when we got to that discussion if needed. I would work out perhaps what they did need, but a lot of it was me asking them to give me what they needed to be on that website. And at the time that worked, for quite a few years, that worked quite well. Quite easy to do a project where I'm really just leading the putting that content onto a website rather than driving what it needs to be. And within a couple of years, actually, it turned into a business that had matched my daytime salary. So by 2016, I was bringing in from the web design business the same as I was from my daytime job. And pretty impressed by that, really, for something that I didn't think would actually work out. Because I originally, when it first did tick off, I thought, if I can just get enough in to change my car. My car's 10, 11, 12 years old now. I've had it a long time, could do with replacing. If I can get enough in from this just to change the car, I'll be happy. That'll be great. On I can go. And by the time 2016 turns up, I'm literally at the point where I can't run two jobs. Not only was the job I was in full time not really working very well for me anymore, and as a household and a family, and for me individually, it just wasn't a pleasant place to be by that stage. The business had taken to the point where I just did not have any time anymore for anything beyond go to work, come home, do some more work, go to bed, and repeat that cycle. So for various reasons, 2016, that was it, full time, put my notice in, had a month to work through, came out of that, and everything was amazing at that point in time because all the time was back. I could work during the daytime. It allowed my wife's job to change because she went from the job she was in, able to accept an offer for a new job where I would have to pick up the childcare in the mornings, pick the kids up from school, the rest of it that goes with it, which was great. We could swap, and it worked out really, really well, to be honest. I worked from home. I didn't have an issue with that. I was used to working in an office that was just me. So to have that at home it felt great. I could begin to kind of put my day back together again and actually have my evenings back and my weekends back. Roll on from there, really. I think I began to realise at that time that I needed somebody to help out with some of the basics that I was doing myself. I say basics, I don't know why I use that word. Some of the stuff that I was doing that I actually didn't have the best skill set at. So we started off from my side of it with the SEO side. I would get clients that wanted to be better placed on Google, and I was doing what I knew at the time to do that, but it got to the point where they needed more than I could deliver. So I met up with a guy called Ray Cassidy. We shared, I don't know whether we had a pint, we certainly had something to eat in a local pub, had a chat, and began to work at that stage on quite a few projects together, where he led the SEO and the copywriting work, and I would then put that together into website design from there, which worked great. It went from there. We then brought in a copywriter, a lady called Sally, who we worked with for quite a few years, met another few other people in similar areas that over the years from there again began to bring into projects. And then COVID hit. And I think as soon as that first lockdown was announced and all of the stuff that went on, at that point, I was like, oh my God, that's it. The business is gone. And actually what I hadn't appreciated at that time was everybody then wanted to be online, because it could be at work, could be in the office. They needed their business to be visible. And that was my busiest year. I think that time I took on twice as many clients as I usually do. I've graphed this every single year that I've been in business to know where these statistics come from and where they go to. And literally got to the end of that first year or two of COVID lockdowns, and I was actually back to being overwhelmed again. But this time from a single business rather than a day job and a business. And things had to change at that point. I really could not. It was beginning to cause problems just in life in general. Clients were beginning to find that the work I was doing was taking longer, that type of stuff. So accidentally, inadvertently found an online group run by a lady called Desislava Dobreva, who had a online membership called the Bad Brand Squad. And through a free weekly challenge, a free 5-day challenge, made me realize at that time that actually not only was I charging far too little for what I was delivering, that to get the business on and get my positioning up and get the larger client projects that I wanted was going to need me to change how I presented online, actually be visible for myself, because at that point I was hidden behind a logo. If you looked me up, you could find a light bulb logo, the odd picture from home or whatever, but it was not me. There was no person behind it, or even my own website. You didn't know what I looked like on that. So people would ring me up, they'd come to meet me in a coffee shop or a cafe or whatever to talk about a project, and they'd walk in and not know who I was because they'd never seen me before. So it's certainly, that week changed from there, my approach in terms of that online visibility. And it did really well for quite a few years from there. I began to get the slightly better projects, the bigger client projects, the more expensive projects, and get my prices and my positioning improved quite a bit from that stage. Roll on to 2021, and I relaunched the business entirely at that stage. I changed my model, how we work, how we approach it, went entirely collaborative. So although I had been working with other people, it was still on a bit of a random, if they needed it at that point, if I wanted them to do it. And in kind of 2020-ish, maybe a little bit sooner, I had one or two clients come to me that already had the design for their website, but they just didn't have it built. They wanted to build that website to match how their designer had created it. And when I took those projects on, I realized the skill set and the workload from me to actually do the design work. One, there were people out there that were far better at design than me. I've got no official design background other than an N in my A-level art and design, which pretty much means not enough work to mark. And that kind of got me intrigued a little bit. So I started to reach out locally to one or two people who were in the design field. Rebecca Watson, I believe, being the first person that we had a bagel and a coffee or a donut. She told me which one that is, I can't remember. And at the time, wasn't quite ready for it. I didn't have the price bracket in, the positioning to actually charge for bringing those people in, because obviously I've got to pay for them, whereas before it was just my own time to cover. I met a lady through LinkedIn called Hannah Gibson, who's a fantastic copywriter, who I literally messaged and said, I don't know when I'm going to do this, but I want to work with you at some point. Your stuff is exactly what I want to be doing. But the prices that she was charging were again beyond my current position point. So we tested that out a bit. 2020, 2019, late, into 2020, we started to play with projects and quote for people like Rebecca and Hannah to be involved as part of that work. And it went really well. I had another designer locally called Maxine, who worked with a client of mine at the time, who had also done some other design work for me. So I had a couple of people around me for that side. We had the SEO work going on. We had Hannah for the copy and others around me as well. So from 2021, fully collaborative. My whole process then was driven by me, but I would bring in the right designer, the right copywriter, the right SEO people, whatever at that time, to deliver what the client needed that website to deliver for their business. So I've proven it as a model. Normally, I'm not a one always for taking unknown risks, although I have done that and regretted it in the later times. But it worked out really well that we got lots of projects coming in for the next few years, 2021 onwards. The work we're doing really began to raise the game. The deliverables that we were presenting to people were above and beyond what I'd done before. And it also helped me with my imposter syndrome. It's not something I've ever talked about much, but certainly when you're not a designer by trade, and I think like a lot of people perhaps start off in web design, you use templates, you go off and download a pre-designed website and you change the structure and the content and the colours to match what that client has given you, which, don't get me wrong, not a bad way to do things for some people. You do get usually a decent looking site, but it's not bespoke. It hasn't been created fully for your business, so it can be a little bit, sometimes not quite ideal. And technically, I began to find limitation with that approach. So we build on a platform called Joomla, which is, I hate to say it, but it's akin to WordPress. It's just a different approach to content management. And when you use a template and you want to add a new feature, that template doesn't always support that feature. So if we wanted to add an online shop, for example, that template was not capable of handling that online shop design very well. So the shop might look poor, wouldn't look very good. There might be compatibility issues with the coding of the software for the shop and the website design work. So it just began to get a little bit complicated for support and everything going forward. So I'd made the decision earlier than this, but also from 2021 onwards, to just specifically start with empty website framework that we then build on to create the custom designs that we've been given by my designers. And also be sure that from an admin perspective, that my clients would have easy access to make changes to their own websites if they wanted it. Not everybody does, but a lot of them do have a login that they can make their own changes. So I have that balance of what I've been doing that allowed me to not only create the bespoke work, but also to provide a standardized platform for all of my clients, that I've got all of my clients on the same tools, the same software. So my support is reduced because I don't have to learn all the different templates and what they've done. I've just got to learn one core set, which means to support my clients, I can do one video and they can all watch that for, refresher training, whatever goes with it. Which leads all the way through, really. I'd got a few years into that. It was working great. 2023, 2024. Market change, kind of 23, 24 time, where linked a little bit, perhaps some of the government changes and the funding and within it and the budgets and the rest of it began to change a little bit. And my pricing began to change because I was, again, realizing that what I was creating and delivering for clients, the actual income for me as an individual after all the expenses had been paid, it became almost undervalued by a huge amount. The clients might start to turn over 3, 4, 5 times what they were before, and I would come out of that with a few £100 profit in essence at the time. It's like that's not a fair swap. It's not an ethical swap of skills. So reviewed my pricing again, what we were doing, made sure that the offers were what I wanted to be doing more of. And it kind of flattened a little bit at that stage. I think, again, what I'd realised at the 2021 flip is that you need to make sure that your positioning is matched with what you're charging. And spent a little while at that stage actually repositioning, making sure that I was talking about, presenting, being that, clear person that actually we could deliver at that price bracket on what the type of client we wanted from us. So I've got to a point now where, because every single client that we've ever taken on, I've got around about 270 clients on board now, because the vast majority stay with me for several years. We manage their hosting, their support, their backups, their security, anything they might want us to change on the website, supporting them in making changes to the website as well. Has allowed me to build up, a fairly reasonable residual base on that. So actually, I'm at a point now where that residual is a significant proportion of my overall turnover. And recently, if anyone's ever seen any of my content, we also took over 42 clients from another website design agency down south, a guy called Chris from Tapioca. He was looking to retire basically, and we chatted a few times on Facebook because we use the same platform Joomla, we use the same tools that make it work. So we just, I guess he built up a bit of trust in me that I could deliver for his clients what he'd been able to, and he handed over in essence with their agreement 42 clients, which I've been supporting now for the past 3 to 4 months. They're all schools down from Northampton area, and through talks, there's other stuff going on within there as well. So that again was quite a significant change to my residual, and it allowed me to look at some expansion plans, make sure that the technical elements of the business had the capacity to deal with what I was doing. I made the very big decision late 2025 to move my server away from the original provider for various reasons. That the performance and the support just was no longer working out for what I needed, and I found a fantastic other supplier who might be on this at some point as a podcast guest from FastCow. So I've now got 2 servers that live down in Telehouse East in London, significantly quicker than the ones I had, well, the one I had before. Without shadow of a doubt, there's almost not a comparison, and it's also costing me now the same as I was paying them, but I've got 2 servers with pretty much triple the capacity, if not more, than I had before. So I've got that set up alongside a lot of other improvements to that setup there that make my life easier, make my clients' life better if they don't even realize it, because of the facilities that solution offers me. And I guess that's part of what I've always tried to do with the business, is keep that look in the future as actually, where is this going to go to? What can I do now that sets me up for the next 5 to 10 years? I know when I first launched the business back in 2014, mobile phones were getting slowly popular. So mobile supported websites were becoming the essential thing. And the first one I put out for Dougie, the garden design website, initially wasn't mobile friendly, but then we were able to very quickly, within the platform we used at the time, turn on mobile friendliness and design it so that it worked on mobile. So I was there from that point forward. Every website we designed was mobile responsive. So I haven't had the issue that I know some other designers have had, where they've had to go and revisit all the previous work and redo them all for mobile. And for some of the ways that they were done, if you've done them static, HTML, whatever, they need rebuilt, because you can't just flick that switch on those ones. So that was one of them. I remember when Google began to make SSL certificates essential, otherwise they give you the security warning in red in Chrome. We turned that on and enabled that way sooner than it needed to be mandatorily enabled, and became part of the rollout process again, just to turn it on for every single new project, so that we were already doing it. And I didn't have to go back and roll that through what would now be 270 websites, which is a huge task. We started to work with, a few years ago, an online platform called mysites.guru. So every single one of our Joomla websites is linked up to that now, so we can monitor that. It runs a regular security scan of every website we've got. It monitors the updates and packages and the CMS updates, so that we can log into that platform and globally update the plugins and extensions and stuff across 260 odd websites. We've got a few that aren't Joomla. In essence, at the click of a button, whereas previously I was having to log into every single one and update them all manually. This platform transformed that in terms of the fast support we can do. So if there's a security fix or a bug fix or a feature update, we can roll it out after some tests of our own really, really quickly, and make sure that our client sites are protected, backed up, secured, the rest of it that goes with it, and up to date in terms of what they can do. I think the next big phase, I don't like to talk about the plans behind the scenes sometimes, because I like to just surprise everybody with what's going on. Rebecca Watson has announced this herself a little while ago, so if you do follow her and you've seen any of her reels, you will know that we are looking at a rebrand, which is almost finished at the moment. I've never been through that process myself before. I'd like clients to do it. I suggested to several clients a lot of the time. I've never rebranded. I've relogoed. I did on my logo professionally designed as it is now, 2016 time. And although that was a little bit of a branding exercise, it really was just, for the most part, working our values into that logo and recreating it. So that logo I've got now has stood since 2016, which is now 10 years old. So it's in need of a refresh, not visually in itself, but also because what the business stands for now and the direction this brand is going to lead me into doesn't fit with what I've got currently. I'm not going to go any further than that, but when it is all released, it will make sense to those of you that know more about me than that one, because we do web design, but we don't just do web design anymore, and that the rebrand captures that core change to it all. So that will lead into all the other things that any of you out there in the know will realise what that will lead into, but I'm not going to drop too many hints, but hopefully it's quite obvious with that one. I've got my timescale for this, which is currently to plan. I will leave myself with hopefully not the same amount of work that I had 2021 launch, because I launched a new website in January 2021, and spent the 2 weeks of the Christmas break redoing all my case studies across to the new format, which I should have done it before then. It wasn't really a holiday that 2 weeks, but and it's looking at that future point. I've got other stuff going on at the moment. I've got some meetings scheduled that I've had a few of, and some more in a couple of weeks' time with some others I want to bring into the business, not to work with my clients, but to work with me. I'm at the stage again where I've been like working with a coach locally who's really made me nudge. I say nudge, he's kicked me to the right direction of like, you can't keep doing this. You need somebody else to do that for you. So there's some elements now that I know, like a bit like the design work, I don't have the skill set to do, or the desire to do a lot of the work that these people hopefully will be able to help me with. Which means, again, I can make sure that my focus is put in the right places. I can continue to do what I want my clients to do, which is to invest in the right people to deliver the results that they need. And this is me, as always, trying to reflect that back into my own business. I look at people that I guess were competitors of mine back in 2014, and they're all the same. They're all in the same place they were then, which is great. They've obviously got a model that works for them. However, my business for me is like a lot of the things I like in life. I struggle with things that have got an end goal. You might see a little red arrow playing up here at the top of the video. That's an Airfix kit I did several years ago. I've got a load of other ones on top of a bookshelf to my left. I loved doing those for several years. I model after model after model, and I got to the point where I felt like I couldn't get any better at them the way that I was doing it. And I lost a bit of interest at that stage, and I haven't gone back to it. I've got a few kits up there that are literally helicoptered without blades on because I've just not finished them off. And the business excites me when it creates its own excitement, and my clients excite me when they come to me, and their excitement brings the project, and we can bounce it round and round, and that enthusiasm level is just phenomenal to work with. So all of that focus, making sure that my business is set up to keep growing, to keep scaling, to keep delivering what I want it to deliver, which is more than we're doing now. As always, there's always something else I want to be doing more of for you guys out there. And that to me is I think the type of people I like to share my time with as well. The martial arts side, you've got the Den scrolls up on that shelf, which you might not have a clue what they are, but go and Google Den scrolls, Koryu Jiu-Jitsu. That's an infinite learning curve. There's not ever a point I can foresee me getting to a day and going, I can do it all perfectly now, because it doesn't work like that. And the people in my club that I teach, train with, same mindset. Business people around me that have got that same mindset are always great to bounce ideas off. And I guess if I come to an end and a conclusion in this podcast today, which is, as I said, just me, look at where you want to be and where you are now, and decide if what you are doing will get you to where you want to be. You might be happy where you are. Some people are happy where they don't want to change. If you're not happy with where you are, you've got to decide whether you're going to do something about it or stay there. Because often if you try and stay there without wanting to be there, it doesn't lead to positivity. And, we're only here once, so we've got to try and make the most of it with the way that we can. And having people around you that can give you those nudges to say, are you sure what do you actually want out of this, right? That might be your partner, your wife, your husband, business coach, peers, others in the same field as you, or people that you work with. Make sure you're surrounded by people that will give you those nudges if you want them. If you don't, fine. If you do, you can do anything that you want with this. And I guess my inspiration comes from others in my field that I see out there that are steps ahead of me. You're looking at the likes of Chris Dorr from the future, who doesn't do it so much now, but he ran a design agency for several years. He's a great YouTube content creator, extremely well known worldwide now. Speaks for Adobe, for goodness sake, on their stage, so he's huge. They're doing, or they were doing logo branding work for tens of thousands of pounds, websites for several tens of thousands of pounds and more. And I'm looking at me going, I'm not even there yet with that. But I can be, and I want to be, and I want to keep pushing this to get the most out of what I can do for my own personal growth, and also for the clients that I love working with, making sure that they can come to us to get exactly what they need us to deliver. So thanks for listening. I'm not sure there's going to be any questions from that one, but as always, if you've got any, drop them in the comments. I will be on YouTube, but you'll also find me on Spotify. So whichever one you're on or not on, I'm on the opposite one as well. My next podcast will have a guest. I've got 3 lined up for recording before the next launch of the next episode 4. So I'll surprise you with who that might be. But I know who those 3 people are, and all of them are going to be fab to listen to. And again, on topics that you probably never thought about in the way that these guys will describe it. So thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.